there, my name is Steve Gerhardt, and as always, this is the Unagi Observer. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching the video this week. I'm going to be a little talky today, and we're going to talk about an entire intellectual property franchise. I'm going to talk about the books that they came from. I'm going to talk about the Netflix live-action series and the one-shot Netflix anime that was created as a result. And this is going to be, yes, a cyberpunk review of, you guessed it, Altered Carbon. So let's get into it. So in 2002, Richard K. Morgan wrote this book called Altered Carbon, and it would be the first book in a 3-book series of Takeshi Kovacs. And it's an amazing series of books. I'm going to get into that in a momentarily. The reviews are going to be a little bit shorter. I want to kind of focus on the world building of Altered Carbon because it's a very good example of cyberpunk. I mean, you can't get much more cyberpunk than Altered Carbon, all 3 books actually. So why don't we just go ahead and get into it. The premise of the Altered Carbon universe, so to speak, is based on certain ideologies and certain technologies that exist within this universe. And one of the first things, and nothing that I'm going to say to you, by the way, is a spoiler. This is something that's actually pretty well explained in the first book, for the most part, Altered Carbon, and it touches on more about the Martians themselves in Broken Angels. And then the 3rd book kind of wraps everything all together in a not so neat, upsetting, but good bow. That's all I'm going to say about it. So the world building, of course, is set, as cyberpunk is wont to be, on the idea that technology is driving what's happening in the world, in the universe, so to speak, and that there are people who are taking advantage of it, and that the technology itself, while meant to be used in a good, productive way for mankind, is often, of course, corrupted, because if you can make money off of it, why not? So, of course, you have your evil corporations and you have your government officials and things like that are wonderful to the cyberpunk genre. But in terms of world building in Altered Punk, here's some of the things that you have to understand. And again, they're explained very well in the first book. The first thing that is important is to know that there is a concept that's called resleeving. And the resleeving is based on a technology that mankind created, which is called a cortical stack. So it's this little tiny piece of metal that they put when you're born. Like, as soon as you come out of the mother's womb, they stick this thing in between vertebrae in the back of your neck. And it's connected to your brain. So the idea is that everything that you are, your consciousness, the things that you learn over time, the things, your memories, the whole 9 yards of what's up in here is also being recorded into this little piece of metal. So what's the big deal about that? Well, let's say something happens to your body. Like, let's say that you step off the curb and a bus loses its brakes and you get creamed and you're killed. Well, as long as your cortical stack is intact, you can be resleeved. You can be put into another body and you can continue your life. And you'll have all your memories, all your consciousness, everything that you had up to the point that you died, that your body was killed. So as long as that cortical stack is intact and functioning, you're good to go. So there's some ethical and moral implications to this technology. For example, wouldn't it be nice if, everyone could live forever if they chose to, so that every time they die, they take their cortical stack out and you just put it into another body? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be awesome? No, because you can't afford it. So that's the world, right? So you have companies that do businesses like saying, hey, we create bodies, custom build bodies for you if you have the money. Or if you are rich enough, you can actually clone yourself, so that if your body, one of your bodies dies, then you can transfer your consciousness and take it out of that cortical stack and put it into the cortical stack of your clone, and there you go. You keep going. And in the Altered Carbon universe, people who are rich enough to either continue to clone their body and keep putting themselves into bodies as they age and die, are called Methuselahs, or meths for short. No, not meth in the drug, as in Methuselah, as in the long-lived biblical character. So, but you have to be insanely rich in order to do that. So usually people, what happens is that, they live their lives and they have the cortical stack, and let's say their body dies, and, natural death, you die of old age. Well, if you have the money to say, okay, well, I'm going to buy another custom built body, then you can do that. If you're rich enough to have a clone, then of course you can do that. But let's say you don't have the money to do that. What happens? Well, one of two things. Either your cortical stack is taken and it's stored in a secure location so nobody can screw with it, and you're just shut down. Like, it's as if you were asleep but you have no dreams. So everything literally goes black, and that's it, until your family can afford a new body for you. Or maybe they can't afford a new body, which is very expensive, or put you into a used body. I'll get into that in a second. Then they can put you in what's called a virtual reality. So they can actually, it's cheaper to make a virtual reality because it's all digital, right? And so you can, if you have enough money, you can make a sort of life of sorts inside this little machine that your cortical stack is put into, and that you can live in this thing for however long it takes your family or your loved ones or whomever to get you a new body somehow. And then take your consciousness out of that and put it into the new body. So there is a law in the Altered Carbon universe, by the way, that says you cannot have multiple versions of yourself existing in the universe. So it's one and done. So it's not like you can go, I'm going to have 5 of me out there in the world. No, it's one at a time. So you can't do that. And again, Altered Carbon explores that idea, that very concept towards the end. So there you go. So what happens if you're a criminal, right? And this is how Altered Carbon starts out. Takeshi Kovacs is an anti-hero. He's not really a nice guy, honestly, but he's the anti-hero of our series. So it starts with him being a criminal and being basically shot up and sent to prison. So they say, okay, well, here's the terms, or not the terms, but here's your sentence. What they do is they take your cortical stack, and as if you were dead, they just turn you off. So there's no virtual reality or anything. They just, okay, you're turned off. And then when they turn you back on, they will give you a very generic body, for you to move around in. No frills, nothing, enough for you to try to improve your body by, working and getting more money so you can just switch into another body. These bodies are very generic. Or because sometimes that might be too expensive in the prison system that you're in, sometimes what they will do, and this is horrible, they will resleeve you into a used body, which means that whatever body that they have on hand in the cryo tanks, that's what they're going to put you into. So when you are taken into prison and you're giving a prison sentence, usually if these prison sentences are pretty long, and the reason for that is the actual punishment. Because think of it this way: let's say you're a criminal and you get and they put you in the prison. They put your cortical stack in the prison. They turn you off. They turn you back on. It's literally as if the light switch went back off and on. Except when the light switch comes back on, it could be 400 years in the future, right? So that means that a lot of the people that are probably dead, or they're in prison, or their cortical stack is stuck in a virtual reality, whatever. So the life that you had is gone. The people that you knew most likely are gone or spread to the winds, to the far corners of the universe, whatever. So that is the actual main punishment, is that you're done, right? So what do they do with your body if your body is actually functional, like no damage is done to it? Well, they put it on ice, right? Since there's no living being in there, they can just freeze everything. So it doesn't matter. It's not like they have to drop down the heart rate to keep you alive. They can just freeze your body. So that when a person is done with their sentence and the light switch comes back on, they're like, okay, here's the body that we're going to put you into. It's somebody else's body. So the other part of the punishment of going to prison is that you will most likely never see your original body ever again. Somebody else has it and is moving around in it and doing things with it. So you got to move on, right? So there's that. So it's very you can see how, oh wow, this is really cool. We have a potential to live forever. Not really, and things can kind of suck. So, but the cortical stack is an important part of the technology because of the second part of technology, which is called needle casting. Needle casting in the Ultra Carbon universe was created to transfer your consciousness from one place to another that's far away. And it's a matter of convenience. So, like, let's say that you're doing, like they talk about this in Ultra Carbon, where you need to be, you're in New York City, but you need to be in LA because of a business meeting, but you need to be back in New York City to have dinner with your wife, whatever. So you can actually have your conscious needle casted. So everything that's in your cortical stack is put into this needle cast, which is this burst of information that's sent, basically at the speed of light, to another needle cast that receives it and downloads it into a sleeve, a generic sleeve built for the purpose of you just showing up. You do the thing, you needle cast back. So that was the original purpose of it, which leads us into the really interesting thing, which is the Martians. So we colonize Mars in this book. It's already done. It's happened. As a matter of fact, the story starts, the whole Ultra Carbon story starts on the planet Harlan's world, which is several light years away from the planet Earth in the far-flung future. And what we discover is that mankind has spread to the stars. And this is how, and this is kind of important. When we colonized Mars and we started to basically terraform it, we came across, in the books, apparently we came across an ancient civilization. And we realized that what we were looking at was a civilization that was so far technically advanced before mankind even showed up on Earth. So it's not clear if the Martians are actually from the planet Mars or if it was just one of their colony outposts. Anyway, so there's all this alien technology there that nobody can really understand. They know it's alien. They can understand sort of social things that happens within this old culture that nobody's seen a live Martian, which is apparently looks like a bat, and they're aviary, so their technology is based on them being able to fly around. Yes, that's kind of what it is. But they really don't talk about that very much until the second book. But they just basically say, well, as a result of finding this stuff, we kind of figured out their language a little bit, and we discovered these astrogation charts, these star charts. And we discovered that there were like all these worlds out there that are inhabitable, because the Martians had this similar type of biology in terms that they would be able to live on Earth kind of thing. So mankind went to the stars. And how they did it was, we already had the needle cast technology, and we already had the cortical stack technology. So what they did is they built ships, huge ships, automated, not manned, with genetic codes in there to grow human beings, right? So robots would grow the human beings once the ship landed. So the ship would go out as fast as it can to the nearest world, set up by robots, grow the human beings, keep them in a tank for a little bit, send a needle cast message back to Earth and say, hey, we're ready for people to needle cast out here. And that's how we went to the stars. So, we kind of hop skip to planet that way. So again, you don't have your original body. So if you're going out to another world, you're going to a world that's going to provide you a new body. Your new body's going to be back on Earth or wherever it is that you live, whatever planet you live on. So this is how mankind gets to the stars, how we're able to travel around a little bit. And this is all basic technology that you are supposed to just accept, suspension of disbelief. And as a result, mankind is able to build up on these worlds. Now we start talking about governments. Of course, each planet has its own government. Kind of. So there's this organization from Earth that kind of acts like the UN, and they're called the Protectorate. And the Protectorate is this sort of military, hey, we're all going to keep the peace, we're all going to be peace-loving people, whatever. They're basically always fighting, because each of these planets usually goes through some type of rebellion or something, some kind of action that requires the Protectorate to come in and kind of put soldiers on the ground and say, hey, everybody calm down a little bit. And then countering to that, which they kind of control the Protectorate, are all the corporations. Yes. all of this has to be funded. So it's private funding that gets mankind to all these different worlds, to do the needle casting, to do the resleeving, to create the cortical stacks, to make sure that people keep going and doing the thing and making money. So at the core of a lot of this is about the money. And so there's your world. That's kind of the world of the altered carbon world. You are dealing with people who are very rich, who can just resleeve at a given's notice. They can travel the universe via needle cast because they have enough money. Then the rest of us schlubs have to figure out how we're going to afford a needle cast, because that's the other part of it. Just like resleeving, you have to be able to have the money to be able to get the needle cast to send that burst of information from your cortical stack to another location. So, yeah, there you go. Corporate greed, right? That's, typical. I mean, literally, as I was reading Altered Carbon, I was thinking of the city landscape in Blade Runner, and that's kind of the vision I have. And, that's kind of what you walk away with. So that is the basic world build of Altered Carbon. So then you have Takeshi Kovacs coming in, and that's where the story kind of starts. So let's talk about now kind of the actual books themselves. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the books, the Netflix series, and the Netflix anime one-shot. So let's start with the books. Okay, so like I said, in 2002, Richard K. Morgan started writing the books. Started with Altered Carbon itself. It's the story of Takeshi Kovacs. I'm going to show you the second book, Broken Angels. Very good book. All three are very good in their own separate ways. Altered Carbon is basically a detective noir cyberpunk story. And Takeshi Kovacs, we start with him on Harlan's world after doing a heist, and the protectorate comes in, or the local police, I forget which one it is, comes in, and basically there's a gunfight, and he gets basically shot up. And then the story starts with him waking up in a prison, being resleeved into a former cop's body. Yes, he gets resleeved into a former cop's body. And at the behest of a very rich Methuselah man, a guy who's been around for a long time, he keeps resleeving himself into a clone of himself for like the past 200 years. So it's not like he's dropping into virtuality for 100 years or so and then waking up in a new body. It's like from body to body to body to body. Whereas Kovacs is being detained, and so he's spent a couple hundred years in this cortical stack prison, so to speak. So when he's resleeved, he discovers that he's not on Harlan's world, but he's actually on Earth. And he's like, okay. And then he's told that his sentence is actually not up yet, but that he is being released because he has been asked for by this rich dude. We all know the story. Rich dude has a problem. He wants the detective to solve it, and he offers incentives, monetary, and the ability to cut the sentence, the prison sentence, and maybe give him a new body, or whatever, or needle cast to somewhere else. So Takeshi Kovacs is like, well, I got nothing else better to do, so why the hell not? So he does the thing, and he takes on the case. And the case, like I said, is very much a cyberpunk detective noir story, much like in the vein of Blade Runner. He's looking for people, he's investigating, and one of the reasons why he is being chosen, and this is important, is that Takeshi was a former envoy. In the Altered Carbon universe, there are different groups, different factions, different people that do different things, and their bodies are and minds are trained to do certain things. Envoys are very sought after and feared, not because of the physical things that necessarily that they can do, which are pretty impressive, but it's their mental capacity. And basically their consciousnesses are altered to the point where they're basically like mentats. If you ever read Dune, they're always thinking, they're always puzzling things out. Like during the course of the story, you'll find he goes, there's something wrong here, I'm just going to shove it in the back of my head for let my subconscious try and figure it out. And he's being literal. Like, he's literally taking a piece of information, putting it into the back of his head for another part of his brain to puzzle it out. So he's trained to do that. Most human beings cannot do that. So he does that, and he's able to read people a lot better than others. He's able to assess situations far more quickly. He can react far more quickly to things. He can plan things far in advance. Like, playing chess against an envoy is a really bad idea. Let's put it that way. So, but it takes a certain type of person to be able to do that to their mind. Now, here's the interesting thing about an envoy, is that those abilities travel with him. So when it's one of those things where it can drop into the cortical stack, and he can needlecast anywhere, and he'll still be an envoy. His body doesn't go with him, obviously. So let's say that he has, and this has happened to him, where he's in a body that is geared for war. So his body is a little bit tougher, a little bit stronger, has better reaction times, whatever, blah blah blah. You can't take with that with you on a needlecast, right? But an envoy can, and an envoy can instantly adapt to any situation that they find themselves in. So as soon as he comes out of the needlecast, he's ready to go. He's ready to rock and roll. When he is turned back on in prison, from the cortical stack prison, he's instantly aware of things that are going on around him. He's already thinking. He's just like, okay, what's going on? This doesn't look right. I'm going to need information, blah, 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 blah. So this is envoy training. Envoys in the Altered Carbon universe are not allowed to hold positions of power in the government for that very reason, because they're able to manipulate the situation to their own ends, and nobody wants an envoy to be able to do that. That's why they're feared. So this rich guy who keeps, going through the clones, for past 250, 300 years, hires Takeshi to figure out why his most recent clone decided to kill himself. It should be mentioned about the cortical stack that I don't think I mentioned before, which is, if you destroy the cortical stack, that is what's considered real death. You don't come back from that, right? So the fact that this guy knew enough to take a laser gun and basically blow out his head and not his cortical stack means something. So he's trying to get Takeshi to figure this out for him. And that's where the road starts. We get into the second book. He goes on to, we find him actually part of a military unit on a planet called Sanction 4. And there's this person that comes up to him, somehow knows he's an envoy, and is getting him to be able to help him free a archaeologist from a prison camp on Sanction 4, because Sanction 4 is going through a rebellion, and a really bad one. Like, things are happening to both sides horribly. Like, they're just treating each other horribly. And because the archaeologist apparently discovered a Martian ship on the other side of the system. Not only that, she found a portal to get there. So this is him navigating that story. In this, we discover more about how envoys, when you pair them with military, are incredibly dangerous and incredibly lethal, and are incredibly very, very, very manipulative. So Takeshi is not a really good guy in this book. He never was. He never is, by the way. But he is definitely the anti-hero. So we go through that story. And the last book is, of course, the whole, if you could talk to your younger self and teach them what not to do. And he gets that opportunity. And I'm going to leave it at that, because the last book is pretty rough, very good, and upsetting. But you should read it. The reason why I spent so much time on Altered Carbon is because that's where most of the world building information comes in. That's where where it gives you a lot of information through the storytelling, which is very good, by the way. So yeah, when you read Altered Carbon, you're going to be like, I need the next book. I need to go to the next book. It's so the books are really that good, and that's no shock to me why somebody wanted to make a television series about it. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the failure of Netflix's Altered Carbon. Okay, so we're going to talk about Altered Carbon as a live-action television series that was done on Netflix. It actually got 3 seasons, and it was a failure. It was so disappointing. I was really looking forward to it. I knew that Netflix has a 50-50 chance on these kinds of things. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Sometimes, on occasion, they're actually really pretty good. This time, it was not as bad as Netflix's Death Note, which to this day I loathe. My review of Death Note would lasted all of me hating on it for 30 seconds. That was it. The reason why the Netflix version was a failure was because they tried too hard. And it should be noted, and I should say this, anytime that you try to make something from a book, whether it be a television series, an animation, a movie, whatever it is that you're trying to do to grab from the book, it's always going to be difficult. It's always going to be an iffy proposition. I mean, that's just how it is. So I don't want it to seem like, I'm getting down on Netflix all the time. It's just that Netflix kind of is on the side of like they mess up more than they succeed. So I just wanted to throw that out there that, it's always going to be difficult. Someone else could have tried to done this and maybe have had the same result, which was not very good. So they tried too hard. And basically what they did is the first season was basically the first book, Altered Carbon, and which is fine. And the actors were fine. I had no problem. I didn't have any issues with that. Acting wasn't bad. I didn't have any issues with that. They did some changes, which were okay to me, honestly. Like, one of the things that they changed is that in the book Altered Carbon, the AI hotel, which is a hotel run by an artificial intelligence, was the Jimi Hendrix experience, and it was just its own AI being in this Jimi Hendrix themed hotel. In the Netflix series, we get basically a AI whose hotel is based on Edgar Allan Poe, and the guy is the AI. The AI it presents itself as Edgar Allan Poe in a hologram, and it worked, honestly. And actually, that particular character was actually one of the more better parts of the entire series, honestly. So they did a good job on that. On that character. They did the Altered Carbon story. It was fine. Like I said, it was fine. Just fine. It wasn't anything special. And I was kind of disappointed because I felt like they could have done more. They could have looked at things a little bit better. And they kind of did a thing where they made the antagonist the actual sister of Takeshi Kovacs. And that just doesn't work. And it just doesn't. The world building, they didn't really do a good job like they did in the book to explain here's why things are. And, not that you need a lot of episodes to do that. You don't even need an entire episode to do that. You probably could spend 5 minutes doing that and it'd be fine. They didn't do a very good job of it. The remaining 2 seasons was basically taking the other 2 books and condensing them into one storyline, and it just failed. It did not work. If you took it for what it was, then you might be mildly entertained. If you're a reader of the books and a fan of the books, you are going to be very angry at this. I would tell you honestly, in terms of whether or not you should watch this, I would tell you that if you read the book and if you want to see the kind of changes they did in Altered Carbon, go ahead. Just understand that it's going to be radically different, and you're going to be like, yeah, okay, whatever. Do not continue with the rest of the series. It's just going to make you angry if you read the book. If you didn't read the books and you watch this, you might be entertained, maybe. But I kind of would not waste my time on it. And so I kind of wish that somebody somewhere, maybe Hulu, would grab this franchise again and try it again. And maybe instead of just saying, hey, we're going to do all the stories from 3 books into one thing, let's just focus on Altered Carbon, the first book, first, and see how we do. And because if you throw all the monies into like that one story, the first book, and you make a good live action series out of it, awesome. I think you would get a hit on your hands. Netflix has a tendency not to do that. So this was a miss on Netflix part. So again, probably wouldn't waste my time. Yeah, if you read the books, definitely don't bother. Sorry, that's what I have to say about it. So, for as dismissive as I am of the Netflix live action series of Altered Carbon, Netflix actually did a thing called Altered Carbon Resleeved, and it was an anime. It's a one shot anime, it's only one episode. Believe it's about 40 minutes, 40, 50 minutes, something like that. They did a good job. I would recommend watching it. I was pleasantly surprised, and I wish that they would actually do more. They would expand on that anime. Um, the anime is kind of cool because what they did is that instead of saying, "Oh, we're going to go totally with the books, with what happened in Broken Angels, the third book, and the first book, blah 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 blah," no, they created their own story of one of the times that Takeshi Kovacs is needle casted onto a world for a particular job that he's being hired to do. So it's a standalone adventure, Takeshi Kovacs adventure. So he needle casts into this world that has a very Japanese origins. Like the people who settled that particular world were Asian in general. And that's another interesting thing that you find about in the Altered Carbon universe is that races and cultures mix heavily, and so it's actually very rare to see a homogeneous planet or town or anything. So, like one of the characters in Broken Angels, they talk about, oh, he's a totally white dude. Really? White? That's a thing? Yes. So, but this doesn't have any. This has nothing to do with wokeness. It has to do with the resleeving technology. So don't read any wokeness into this, please. Thank you. So anyway, so he gets onto this world, and basically he is being mired into a transfer of power between clans. Yakuza is involved, the government's involved, blah 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 blah. So Takeshi, it's basically a detective noir story. Takeshi Kovacs. The animation, as a lot of people know, when anime started using CGI more heavily, I was not a fan of it. It's been getting progressively better and better and better. This Resleeved was, I think, towards the tipping point of anime getting better at CGI animation, because this actually looks good. And I think part of it is because it is a hybrid between regular 2D cell and CGI stuff. It is very action packed. You have the basic here's the world building from the original book Altered Carbon. It's right there for you. You understand it pretty well. The story moves at a really good pace. You kind of get a telegraph of who the bad guy is a little bit, but beyond that, it's actually a really cool story. You like the characters. Takeshi is Takeshi, even though he's in a different sleeve. This time he's sleeving a different person, a different body, I should say. And very well rendered, very well done. I would totally, if you're an anime person and you want a cyberpunk anime, I'll go ahead and drop into this and take a look at it. We delve very deeply into the Yakuza world, and what's interesting is that in this particular story, we kind of leave the Protectorate out. We kind of leave the evil corporations out a little bit. They're there, right? They're there just as part of the plot, or part of, to move the plot along, I should say. But this is really about the Yakuza on a different world in the future, and it's kind of interesting because the other part of this one shot that does something very well, which is the transfer of cultures from Earth to these new places in a future time, and how people hold on to traditions and how that's important, and how things that seem like at this point, it's like almost the year 2800, whatever it is. And we're far away from today, right? 2023. So suddenly you see all these like really ancient Japanese stuff, like gongs and statues and shrines and people talking about it. I think there's even a monk in the story somewhere. And so, it brings that contrast of, here are these old traditions that we want to adhere to, but here's the technology that keeps getting in the way. So like I said, it's very, very good. Very action packed. I mean, if you want, this is not a talkie, right? It's not like Ghost in the Shell kind of thing. There's always something going on. And again, like I said, the animation is actually quite good. So yeah, I've done a review on these things before, the books, the live action and the anime before. I just want to revisit them. And while I don't really recommend the live action at all, I would tell you, go ahead and give this. And here's the other really nice part about Altered Carbon Resleeved is that if you have not read the books, that's okay. That's okay. You don't need to know everything, because the story in Resleeved actually gives you that information fairly in a fairly concise manner. So don't worry about that. You don't need to read the books to watch Resleeved. Go watch Resleeved. It's still on Netflix. Then by all means, please watch it. It's actually quite good. Again, it's its own story. So if you have read the books, then you're going to see things and you're going to be like, oh, that's cool, they included that. But it's not going to be linked to any real story that you see in the books. So for those of you who are the book fans, just to let you know that it's a complete one-off story. And I wish that Netflix would come back and do more of that, or spend the money like they did on that animation and actually do, that would be awesome, do Altered Carbon the book as an anime. That'd be even better. Somebody get on that, please. Somebody get on that. Make an anime out of Altered Carbon, the first book. Please, somebody go do it. If I had the monies, I'd throw it at you. All right, so yes, watch Altered Carbon Resleeved. I think it's still on Netflix. So when I decided to do today's video, there's something that originally I was going to say, you know what, why don't we just leave that out, because can I do this without actually creating a spoiler? And I think I can. It's going to be really cryptic, but just bear with me. One of the things, the world building that you see in all three books, and it pops up of course, in Altered Carbon, the first book, is Quell. Quell was a woman revolutionary on Harlan's world whose writings and rebellion has echoed through many, many other worlds. There are people who are called Quellists who follow her writings, her teachings. No one has ever found her cortical stack. We don't know if she's alive. We don't know if she's dead. Throughout the books, you're going to see quotes from Quell. Takeshi Kovacs is going to quote Quell quite often. People deride Quell for the most part, and the Protectorate treats Quell with heavy hands. In other words, they whenever that pops up, people are very careful of what they say when it comes to Quell. They don't want to get the intention of the Protectorate coming down on them if they seem like they're pro-Quell, right? So I'm just going to put that out there because it's everywhere in the Altered Carbon universe books. It is, you cannot escape it. You see the quotes, you see what Takeshi Kovacs says, and you're wondering about the connection. In the Netflix series, they do a really, really bad storyline on this. Ignore it. Please ignore it. Resleeved does not talk about Quell at all. So this is all within the books. But I think it's important to note that, because you're going to come across that and you're going to be like, what the heck is this? And that's kind of the point. So just wanted to throw that out there. I decided at the last second to go ahead and mention it, just so you won't be totally confused by it when you see it. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so that was the next Cyberpunk review, and it was of the Altered Carbon universe, so to speak, the franchise, the books, the live action series, the anime, Resleeved anime. Hope if you are new to Altered Carbon, my hope is that you'll go to your library, support your local libraries. Libraries are important. I'm a big proponent of libraries. Check the book out. enjoy it. I hope you enjoy enough to read the next two books in the series. Richard K. Morgan is actually a very good author when it comes to cyberpunk. He has written a couple other series. He's done the fantasy stuff, and he's also done another non-Takeshi Kovacs sort of cyberpunk series based on a different concept. Some readers think it is part of the Altered Carbon universe. Other people say that it isn't. You draw your own conclusion. Those are books that start with 13. I think the next one is Thin Air, and I forget if there's a third one coming out or not. Anyway, so Richard K. Morgan, actually a very good writer, very good cyberpunk writer. I encourage you to read his stuff. Start with Altered Carbon, and you'll probably love it like I do, love it like so many other people do. And I encourage you to also watch Altered Carbon Resleeved, the anime, and just don't bother with the Netflix live action series, please, because they'll just disappoint you. But read the books, watch the anime. So yes, there you go. Again, strongly recommend those two things. And that's going to be it for this video. So you guys, stay well, stay healthy. Come see us over on Anime Archaeology or Twitch, Anime Archaeology, for our in-depth, Brent and I do in-depth analyses of various anime. So please join us. There's around 7 o'clock on Sundays and 7 p.m. on Sundays. Hope to see you there. We have a chat function, live chat function. Yes, indeed. And so you guys do well, be well, love you, and I will see you next time. And as always, watch more anime.